Russia wants its own global junta. What Putin's advisor wrote concerning all this? The planet is topsy-turvy. Everything shows that in Russia they want to present their own junta, their own model, which will not be internationalist but will fight everything internationalist, controlling the people in turn, just like the West does. Philosopher and journalist Alexander-Dugin, Putin's advisor, states in his article in Real Novosti that Russia needs censorship and repression. However, it promotes a new ideological background. Dictatorship, control, and coercion will be promoted in Russia, but with different principles and worldview than that of the West, with the hope that it will prevail all over the world, he said. As he writes, among other things, he says, as our society drifts deeper into cultural conflict with the West, and the confrontation with it in Ukraine becomes increasingly bitter, the issue of censorship and even repression becomes increasingly urgent. Let's start with the fact that censorship and repression exist in every society. It's always built around a well-defined ideology, a system of basic attitudes and principles. At the same time, they are never strictly formulated in criminal or administrative law, but rather predetermined in ideological body that functions as an additional guide to the law and its applications. What is permissible and what is not, what can be tolerated and what requires state intervention by force, is never determined by alienated law. On the contrary, the laws are adopted by the bearers of the dominant ideology. They also give their interpretation and build a hierarchy when, to whom, and in what cases they should be applied more or less strictly. They also monitor the enforcement and punishment system. Therefore, the sociologist Weber accurately determined that only the state has a legitimate right to violence. Modern Western society is no exception in this sense and is essentially no different from other totalitarian regimes of recent centuries, be it communism or fascism. The difference lies only in ideology and methods, but otherwise every dominant ideology works in the same way. What corresponds to it is accepted, and what goes outside its framework or, moreover, challenges the ideological foundations, in this case neoliberalism, internationalism, becomes the object of censorship and repression. It remains only to find out what kind of censorship and what kind of repression should exist in our modern Russia society, he says. We are waging a culture war in the West, where neoliberal, hence internationalism, ideology has triumphed. We affirm our traditional values, and that the president even issued decree number 809 on the need for their protection on the part of the state. And these values, love for the motherland, justice, a strong family, the triumph of spirit over matter, solidarity, and so on, have little in common with neoliberalism. It's therefore obvious that our censorship and repression must arise from other criteria than those of the modern neoliberal West. For neoliberals, the classic opponents are those who recognize their national right or class left collective identity, and as such they are primarily subject to censorship and repression, since any objection to neoliberalism and individualism, and today against globalization, LGBT, critical race theory, multiculturalism, and transhumanism, is already considered a thought crime. At the same time, the neoliberals, after all, they are the ideological ruler, are considered normative bodies of the dominant worldview. Neoliberals immediately categorize their enemies as fascist right or Stalinists left. How to construct or dominate censorship, and what should be chosen as a criterion for objectively unavoidable repressions? So far, they have introduced the principle of banning criticism of the president, that is, Putin, and the military in the context of military operations, fairly clear and transparent criteria. There's also a provision already approved to ban public criticism of the special military operation in Crimea itself. And the more serious the conflict, the more strictly these criteria will be applied. A neoliberal cannot be a Russian patriot at all, since he considers himself a citizen of the world and a bearer of the values of Western civilization. Foreign agent status can be preliminarily issued to all neoliberals, he said. That is ridiculous. It's necessary to transcend all three political ideologies of the European modern era, liberalism, communism, and nationalism, and create our own authentic dominant worldview based on the fundamental values of our people and our state. And with so, starting from that, let's build our own strategy of censorship and repression, he says. Let us turn in the name of unity, strength, and loyalty against Russia's ideological enemies, overt and covert. So, there for dictatorship, censorship, repression, no freedom of speech. You can imagine what kind of Russia this is. Please leave your comments and thank you for your support. This is translated for you from a Greek article. Thank you. Support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.